Chapter 17 Interstellar Space Station A2712. It was almost midnight when Tavi left the Zuhause, running through the plan in her thoughts as she was carried by her star car through the night. She imagined how she would pick up Lux and bring him with her to the ACIST. In a few hours, a new day would begin, and the celebrations would start. The city was almost empty, yet colorful decorations hung from the facades. Small yellow suns and stars, bright flags stretched between buildings, and orange paper lanterns that would soon be lit, bathing the city in a warm, glowing light. During Stefan's meeting at Zuhause, they had agreed that Tavi would tell Lux there was an emergency at ACIST about the mission and that he had to come with her. Only this way could they prevent the brainwashing from taking hold and keep the pain caused by the iron bands from making him compliant to the Institute and ultimately jeopardizing the mission. Tense, Tavi drove through the decorated streets, imagining how she would tell him that. When she finally reached his apartment, she was surprised to see that there was still light in his window. "I'm sorry," she whispered, as she knocked on his door. She had never lied to him before. Her heart skipped a beat when she heard footsteps inside the apartment, then the hiss of the airlock. When the door opened in front of her, she stepped inside, closed the door behind her, and removed her helmet. "Hey, how are you doing?" she asked, with a smile as Lux stood in the airlock in front of her. "Hey, thanks, I'm feeling better already." Lux didn't seem surprised to see Tavi. "I'm here to tell you that there's an emergency at the ACIST and we've been ordered to go there immediately and check on the spaceship." All at once, Lux's back straightened, his posture becoming rigid, his gaze serious and fixed forward. "Right now?" he asked, and Tavi nodded, surprised that he didn't really question it. "I'll get my helmet," he said, and quickly disappeared into the apartment. Then they walked together to her star car. "What exactly is it about?" he asked. "It has something to do with the coordinates for the Bernard star system," she made up on the spot. "As pilots, we are supposed to go in the spaceship and check them. The technicians are already there, and I've been given a new access card for a special entrance, so everything can proceed quickly and smoothly." They got in, and Tavi entered the coordinates for the rare entrance of the ACIST. She was glad she didn't have to look Lux in the face. She felt terrible, even though it was the only way to free him from the mental restraints of the iron bands. "How is it that they informed you and not me?" Lux asked after a moment of silence. "Damn." "I was still there," Tavi replied. "Right now everyone is busy with the preparations. I'll be glad when this stressful time is over and things finally quiet down again, actually." Silence. The closer they got to the ACIST, the more unbearable Tavi's tension became. She had rarely seen ACIST this dark. Normally the lights in its windows were visible from far away. This time it was almost completely dark. Like a shadowy giant, it rose into the endless sky. She focused and gradually made out the patrol star cars, maneuvering quietly around the ACIST at regular horizontal intervals. She turned into a side alley to reach the other side unnoticed. "Why are you going this way?" Lux asked. "We need to get to the other side. I know the route." "But why don't you just drive straight ahead and past the ACIST?" "I don't know if they know we're coming," Tavi said hesitantly. "Then we'll just show our badge and they'll let us through." Actually, maybe that might have worked as well, but she was glad that they did not take that risk, and by now Tavi had already reached the rare entrance. They stood in the shadow of another building, and she slowly cut the engine, watching as the patrol ships reached the end of ACIST's outer wall. "Come on," she said suddenly, and got out quickly. Lux followed her as she walked briskly towards the heavy metal door. She could feel his doubt and the frantic turning of thoughts in his mind, but he followed her anyway. They drew closer and closer to the door set into the building's wall, and she knew that at any moment a star car could turn around the corner. Above them, one patrol vehicle disappeared behind the next corner, and Tavi broke into a run. At the door, she first searched the lock, then the wall beside it, for a card reader. Come on, come on. It was so dark she could barely see anything, her finger sliding blindly along the wall next to the door. On the right side, at hip height, her finger suddenly brushed over a raised surface. It was rough and metallic, covered in rust. This has to be it. She reached into her pocket and pressed the card Stefan had given her against it. Please, just work. It beeped. She pushed against the door, but nothing happened. She held the card to the raised panel again, the same beep. She pressed with all her strength and felt the door give slightly. She glanced sideways and to her surprise saw Lux, now leaning into the door as well. Together they pushed with all their might, the door sliding open centimeter by centimeter. When it was open, just enough to squeeze through, Lux held it steadily while Tavi ducked under his arm and slipped through the narrow opening into the building. At the same moment, she heard the hum of an approaching star car. "Quick!" she hissed to Lux. He scrambled through the tight gap into the interior of ACIST, and the door slammed shut behind them with a loud bang. Tavi looked around. The room was filled with clutter. Technical assemblies, hundreds of boxes, and shelves stacked with metal parts. In front of the door they had just come through stood a large, heavy metal cabinet, now pushed forward by the door. "We should move that back," she said, leaning into with all her strength, trying to push it back in front of the door they had entered through. Lux hesitated, then helped her. "Tavi, what in the world are we doing here?" They pushed the cabinet and Tavi's thoughts raced. "Please, just trust me, okay?" she said quietly. She couldn't keep lying. What could she possibly say now that he would believe after all this? "I'm not sure what's going on here," he said, "and I don't think I even want to know, but I think you're making a huge mistake. We can still leave, or we can stay here in the basement until ACIST opens again, then go up to our offices and pretend nothing ever happened. We can even leave again through that door. I promise you, if you change your mind now, nothing will happen to you. I won't betray you." Giving up was not an option for Tavi. She no longer believed in the Federation, nor in the life on the Interstellar Space Station. She longed for something she would never have again without Earth. For life. For oceans, nature, and animals. For a home where people truly belonged. A place where she wouldn't have to wear a helmet just to leave the house. Where not everything was made of metal. She wanted to see something different. She didn't want to go to a star system that was uninhabitable. She wanted to return to the place where her roots lay. But Lux couldn't understand any of that, not under the influence of the iron bands. She looked at him sadly. "Please, just trust me." They walked through the room, passing countless shelves filled with metal components and crates, and to her surprise, Lux stayed by her side. When she reached the door on the opposite side of the room and pushed against it from the inside, it opened, and they found themselves in a long corridor shrouded in complete darkness. One could not even see one's own hand in front of the face. "This way." Stefan made sure she memorized the floor plan thoroughly, and while it had annoyed her in that moment that he kept running her through it over and over again, she was now utterly grateful for his merciless persistence. He had drilled the floor plan into her memory, and now she mentally retracted the routes they had discussed all evening. She heard Luke's footsteps behind her, and it calmed her. Her hand slid along the corridor walls, searching for a light switch. But soon she realized that turning on the lights might not be a good idea, and she focused instead on where she was going. After some time, they reached another large door that led into a stairwell. She leaned into it and, to her dismay, realized that it was locked. They both put their full weight against it, shaking it, but it wouldn't budge. Frustrated, Tavi kicked the door. "What now?" Lux asked. She went over the floor plan once more in her head. She remembered that there was a second way into the stairwell on the other side of the building. But what if that door was locked as well? A sickening feeling spread through her stomach. What if they had already failed? "Maybe there's a way to break the door open," Lux interrupted her thoughts. "I think there's another way." They turned back, heading in the opposite direction down the pitch-black corridor, their only points of orientation the walls and the map of the building Tavi had stored in her mind as best as she could. When they reached a fork in the hallway, Tavi stopped. She didn't remember exactly where they needed to go, right or left. She knew one of these corridors led towards the stairwell straight to the reception, which would surely mean the end of this mission, while the other led directly to the hallways that were also connected to the spaceship. She pictured the building in her mind and finally turned right. It was more a guess than certainty. Please let this be the right way. At the end of the corridor, she pressed against the door, which slowly gave way. They moved through another dark hallway until the stairwell appeared in front of them. Now they had to go up to the third floor, where another door was located, one she could open with her regular ACIST access card. By now there were passing light switches, but Tavi chose not to use them. It was better not to draw attention. At any moment someone from ACIST security guards could appear at the end of the corridor or step outside from a doorway. There was no way of knowing when they might walk straight into them. With quiet steps they slipped through the corridors until they stood in front of the door leading to the spaceship. If they went through here, there would be no turning back. Tavi and Lux looked at each other for a moment. Then Lux raised his hand and held his access card against the reader. The card reader beeped and lit up green. They stepped inside and found themselves alone in a vast hangar, standing before the largest spaceship Tavi had ever seen in her life. The heavy door slammed shut behind them, and Tavi and Lux walked towards the stairs leading into the ship. When they reached the top, they entered the vessel and heard the voices of Tangi, Baltok, and David. Tavi moved towards the front section and saw the three of them seated in their chairs. When they heard Tavi and Lux, they all turned around at the same time. "Hey, there you are," they greeted them. "Are you already done?" Tavi asked. "Just finished. We've got another 3 hours before the others arrive." Tavi's hands started sweating. The thought of having to go back through the corridors to the entrance to let the others in filled her with dread. "Who do you mean by the others? And you're from the programming team?" Lux asked hesitantly. They looked at Tavi questioningly, and she gave them a subtle nod. "Yes. Thanks for the good work. I was ordered to have the supplies checked as well. Clothing, food rations, and so on. Lux, would you take care of that?" "Why are we being called in here in the middle of the night just to check supplies? We could do that next week." "Don't question the captain's order," she snapped. "You know how important this mission is." Lux nodded and took the list Tavi handed him. They headed toward the cargo bay, Lux leading the way. When he stopped and held his card to the reader, the sliding door opened and he stepped inside. Tavi, Baltok, Tangi, and David exchanged hurried glances, then nodded. The door closed behind Lux, and with a swift, smooth motion it locked from the outside. Through the small window they watched as Lux looked up and tried to unlock the door, but there was no card reader on the inside. Then he shouted something they couldn't hear from outside, slammed his fists against the door. Tavi turned away. The sight of him trapped in that room made her shudder. "Now we just need to bring in the others," she said quietly. "Then we are ready for launch."